You are obsessed with finding the final answer. You read articles, watch documentaries, argue in comment sections, because underneath all of it, you desperately want to reach that safe, solid destination called I know. You treat knowledge like a finish line. You sprint toward it. You get there, plant your flag, and feel the profound relief of someone who no longer has to keep searching. But here is the question that should genuinely unsettle you. What if the finish line doesn't exist? What if the universe is an endless ocean of infinite possibilities, and you are a small sailboat, and every time you say, I know, with that particular confidence, you have dropped your anchor in a shallow puddle and called it the sea? Today, we are looking at a story about a man who chose to sail the infinite ocean and society killed him for it. By the end of this video, you will pull up your anchor. You will finally embrace the terrifying freedom of never knowing, my friend. First question: why do we treat knowing as a final destination instead of an ongoing, endless journey? Plato wrote the Apology around 399 BC. It is the account of Socrates defending himself at his trial in Athens. And what Socrates says in that courtroom, to a jury of 500 people who are deciding whether to execute him, is one of the most quietly radical things any human being has ever said in public. He doesn't argue that he is innocent by playing the game everyone expected him to play. He argues that the entire city has been confused about what wisdom actually is, and he does it calmly, almost gently, like a man who has made his peace with the ocean and is genuinely puzzled that everyone else is still fighting to stay in the puddle. The story starts not with the trial, but with a question. Someone goes to the Oracle of Delphi, the most famous source of divine wisdom in the ancient Greek world, and asks who is the wisest person alive. And the oracle names Socrates. Socrates hears this and is genuinely confused. Not falsely modest, actually confused. Because Socrates is a man who has spent his entire life looking at the ocean and feeling the heavy weight of how little his boat can carry. He doesn't feel wise. He feels like someone who knows exactly how small his boat is. So the oracle's claim makes no sense to him. And because he is Socrates, he decides to investigate. How does the illusion of absolute certainty protect us from the terrifying vastness of the universe? Because looking at the real size of what we don't know is genuinely frightening. The ocean is not a metaphor you can glance at comfortably and move on from. It is infinite in every direction. Every answer generates 3 new questions. Every field of knowledge has edges that dissolve into fog. Everything a person thinks they understand thoroughly enough, when examined closely enough, turns out to be sitting on a foundation of assumptions they never examined. The honest response to all of this is permanent, active uncertainty. And permanent, active uncertainty is deeply uncomfortable to live inside of. So we drop anchors. We find a position, a belief, an identity built around certain conclusions, and we stop moving. We call this wisdom. We call it having figured things out. We call it being a person who knows where they stand. And the anchor feels like safety. It feels like finally being still after a long, exhausting sail through open water. Socrates goes to the politicians, the people who run Athens, who speak confidently about justice and governance and right and wrong, who stand in front of crowds and deliver conclusions with the authority of people who have arrived somewhere the rest of us haven't reached yet. He approaches them as a genuine student. He wants to understand what they know. He asks questions. Why do we drop our mental anchors in shallow puddles and claim we have conquered the entire ocean? Because the politicians are sitting in puddles. That is what Socrates discovers. They have a puddle of real experience, a puddle of real skill in certain narrow areas, and they have extended that puddle outward in their minds until it covers everything. The man who is effective at winning elections believes he understands justice. The man who is good at accumulating political power believes he understands what is good for human beings. He speaks with a certainty that sounds, from a distance, like someone who has sailed far and returned with hard-won knowledge. But when Socrates asks pointed questions, the ground underneath the certainty dissolves almost immediately. And here is the part that matters. The politicians don't respond to this by becoming curious. They don't think, interesting, I may have been wrong about the extent of my knowledge. They get angry. Because showing a confident captain that his ship has never left the harbor is not received as useful information. It is received as an attack. Socrates moves on to the poets and the artisans, the skilled craftsmen, the people who build things with their hands and write things with their words. And he finds something similar, expressed differently, because these people have real skill, genuine, demonstrable skill. The shoemaker really does know how to make a shoe in a way that Socrates genuinely doesn't. The poet really does have a gift for language that produces something real and moving. What happens to our minds when we realize the absolute truth is an impossible, unreachable horizon? The artisans have made an error in the other direction. Because they know one thing well, they have assumed the knowing transfers. The shoemaker, who is genuinely excellent at shoes, has concluded, somewhere underneath his confident surface, that he also understands politics, ethics, the nature of the soul, the right way to organize a city. His expertise in one narrow area has been quietly extended in his own mind to cover the whole ocean. And when Socrates shows him the edges of what he actually knows, he too becomes defensive. Socrates makes enemies everywhere he goes, not because he is unkind, because the thing he is doing, which is pointing at the actual size of the ocean, is something nobody wants to see. Everyone has their puddle arranged perfectly. Everyone has their anchor dropped in a chosen spot they have decided is adequate. And Socrates keeps walking up and asking them to look at the water around the puddle, to look at how much ocean there is, to feel the full weight of how far the horizon extends. Most people, when they do this, feel something close to vertigo. The comfortable certainty dissolves, and what's underneath is the open water, and the open water is enormous and cold and doesn't care about any of their previous conclusions. Why does the crowd demand firm, comfortable answers instead of honest, difficult questions? Because living with genuine uncertainty is exhausting. You can't build a day around uncertainty. You can't make decisions from uncertainty. You can't organize a society, have a conversation, make a plan, or feel stable inside an honest acknowledgement of how much you don't know. The anchor isn't cowardice, it's survival. Most people need the puddle to function. They need to believe the puddle is the sea, or the daily work of being a person becomes unbearable. Socrates has decoded the oracle by now. He understands what it meant. He is the wisest, not because he knows the most. He is the wisest because he is the one person who has fully accepted that the destination doesn't exist. The ocean is endless. The boat is small. The wisest sailor is not the one who claims to have found land. It is the one who has made peace with sailing forever, who has accepted the horizon as his permanent companion rather than his enemy. I know that I know nothing. This is the line that got him killed. Not because it is depressing, because it is liberating in a way that threatens everyone who has built their identity around the anchor. The man who says I know nothing is free to keep moving. He can examine anything. He can revise any conclusion. He can hold every belief loosely and change his position when new information arrives. He is genuinely sailing, and his sailing makes the anchored people feel the weight of their own ropes. How do experts build fake islands of certainty to calm the anxious masses? By speaking with a confidence that exceeds their actual knowledge, by using the vocabulary of their expertise to extend the appearance of authority beyond the territory where it genuinely applies, by creating the impression that somewhere, at the center of their field, there is a solid island of established, settled, permanent truth, and by never, under any circumstances, looking directly at the edges where their island dissolves back into ocean. This is not dishonesty in the ordinary sense. Most of the experts genuinely believe they are on solid ground. They have been standing in their puddle for so long that it feels like bedrock. They have forgotten, or never fully faced, the fact that bedrock is also sitting on something. And that something is sitting on something. All the way down, there is ocean. Socrates goes to trial. The charges are corrupting the youth of Athens and not recognizing the gods the city recognizes. Both charges are, at their root, about the same thing. He is making people uncomfortable. He is pushing their boats away from the dock and into open water, and they do not want to go. Why is the sentence, "I do not know," the ultimate act of intellectual courage? Because everything rewards the opposite. Every conversation rewards the person with the confident, clear, settled answer. Every institution rewards the expert who presents conclusions with authority. Every social situation makes it easier and more comfortable to nod along with the established certainty than to raise your hand and say, "Actually, I'm not sure this is as settled as we're pretending it is." The pressure to anchor is constant and enormous. Saying "I do not know" with genuine meaning rather than as false modesty is a declaration that you are still sailing, that you haven't stopped, that you are willing to feel the vertigo of the open ocean because you believe the sailing matters more than the comfort of the anchor. Most people will not reward you for this. Some of them will actively resent you for it. Athens sentenced Socrates to death. Think about what that means. A city of people, educated and sophisticated by the standards of their time, decided to execute a man because he asked questions, because he pointed at the ocean, because the discomfort he created by showing people the actual limits of their knowledge was more threatening to the social fabric than anything he might have actually done. Why did society kill Socrates for trying to push their comfortable boats into the open water? Because the fake islands matter more to the people on them than you might initially think. An island, even a fake one, is where people have built their houses, their identities, their relationships, their entire sense of who they are and what they know and what the world means. Show a person that their island is made of sand and you haven't given them information. You have threatened their home. You have told them that the thing they organize their life around is not solid ground. The defensive anger this produces is not irrational. It is the fear of someone watching their house slide into the ocean. Socrates is given the option to propose an alternative to death. He could suggest exile. He could offer to stop asking questions. He could take his boat back to the harbor and tie it up and promise never to sail again. He refuses. He says the unexamined life is not worth living. He means it. He has been sailing for too long to pretend the puddle is enough. He drinks the hemlock. How does accepting our permanent ignorance actually set us free? Because the anchor is heavy. The pretending is exhausting. The performance of certainty, maintained against the constant pressure of a universe that does not cooperate with our settled conclusions, requires enormous ongoing effort. And the thing about the open ocean is that once you stop fighting it, once you accept that you are small and the water is vast, and this is the permanent condition of existing as a human being with a human brain in an incomprehensibly large universe, something shifts. The terror becomes something else. Not comfortable exactly, but alive. The person who knows they don't know is free to be genuinely curious. They can pick up any idea and turn it over without the anxiety of defending a fixed position. They can change their mind without the psychic cost of admitting that their previous certainty was mistaken. They can have a conversation as a genuine exchange rather than a territory defense. They can look at the horizon and feel the pure excitement of someone who knows there is more ocean ahead. Let's be honest about the anchor. You have one. Everyone does. The question is not whether you have an anchor, but whether you are aware that it is an anchor and not bedrock. Whether you know, at some level you don't often visit, that the puddle has edges, that the certainty you carry into your arguments and your identity and your judgments about other people is the best available guess of a small sailboat, not the final word of a captain who has seen everything there is to see. Socrates didn't have all the answers. He didn't claim to. He had something better. He had the commitment to keep asking, to approach every new conversation and every new idea as a sailor approaches a new stretch of ocean. With attention, with humility, with the knowledge that the map is incomplete and probably wrong in several places, and that this is not a problem to be solved, but a permanent feature of the situation. If you pulled up your heavy anchor today, how far could you sail tomorrow? This is the question he died for, not the exact answers he may have found along the way, not any particular conclusion about justice or piety or the nature of the soul, but the willingness to keep the question open, To refuse the puddle even when the puddle is comfortable and warm and everyone around you is settled in theirs and deeply suspicious of people who keep moving. You don't have to agree with everything, Socrates concluded. Some of his conclusions are genuinely debatable. The method is the thing, the radical act of sitting with not knowing, of being genuinely uncertain instead of performing certainty, of being the person in the room who says, "I'm not sure," and means it, and treats the not sureness as a beginning rather than a failure. The ocean is not your enemy. The horizon is not a threat. They are the actual size of reality, and the boat is small, and the sailing is the thing, and the man who drank the hemlock, rather than tie his boat to the dock, was the most alive person in that courtroom. Pull up your anchor. See how far the water goes.